You're watching NBC5 News at 10.
Now at 10, a statewide alert putting the safety of elevators everywhere in question.
There's a problem right there.
All stemming from a horrific accident right here in North Texas.
She's suffered severe hypoxic brain damage. She's had seizures.
Tonight, NBC5 Investigates digs into what led up to the incident.
In hindsight, do you regret not modernizing that elevator?
Absolutely.
And what hospital administrators say they would do differently.
Our top story tonight impacts everyone across Texas. A statewide safety alert warns that elevators, especially those with a certain kind of brakes, might not be safe. Good evening, I'm Meredith Land.
And I'm Brian Curtis. The warning comes with a newly released report blaming a brake failure for an incident at JPS Hospital in Fort Worth that severely injured a nurse. Tonight, NBC5 Investigates has obtained documents telling the story of what led up to that horrific incident and what it may say about the safety of elevators everywhere. Our senior investigative reporter, Scott Friedman, has that story just ahead.
But first, Scott Gordon is digging into this new report that's raising alarm for all Texans tonight.
State inspectors released this video that shows them examining elevator 29 at JPS Hospital, the same elevator that crushed nurse Karen Stratford 5 months ago and left her with lifelong injuries.
There's a problem right there.
The problem? They blamed badly maintained brakes that failed, saying there were no visible signs of lubrication on the brake sleeve.
Well, it's consistent with what we've seen so far.
The nurse's attorney, Frank Bransom, is suing the hospital's former maintenance company, ThyssenKrupp, also known as TKE. He took his own photos of the brake to use as evidence.
See the rust? And the inspector found the shoe was worn, and there should not be rust on brake shoes. And the reason is they need to be oiled, and you need to have a lubricant around this brake system, which just wasn't there.
Meanwhile, inspectors are issuing a statewide warning, urging building owners to look closely at brakes, especially on older elevators with so-called drum brakes, like the one at JPS.
After what happened to Ms. Stratford merely going to work and riding up to a floor to provide nursing services, it makes me think when I get on an elevator, and I assume it would make everybody else.
We reached out to the elevator company TKE. A spokesman says the company has not had a chance to review this report and has no comment. JPS says the report shows TKE wasn't doing its job. Brian and Meredith.
All right, Scott, and tonight hundreds of pages of records show what led up to that horrific accident.
NBC5 Investigates has obtained emails suggesting JPS Hospital's elevator system was in chaos, with elevators constantly braking for at least a year before that incident. Here's senior investigative reporter Scott Friedman. Scott?
Brian and Meredith, tonight one veteran elevator inspector tells us what happened at JPS could happen in many buildings today. Records show for more than a year, hospital staff repeatedly questioned the contractor hired to maintain the elevators, complaining of breakdowns and delays in repairs. And while the two sides went back and forth, people got hurt.
You step through the doors, press the buttons, and never imagine what could go wrong. On January 20th, nurse Karen Stratford was boarding elevator 29 at JPS Hospital. With the doors still open, the elevator kept moving, crushing her body.
She's suffered severe hypoxic brain damage. She's had seizures.
Now, emails obtained by NBC5 Investigates show elevator 29 was just one of many with problems long before that incident. For at least a year, the hospital complained to its elevator contractor about a slew of broken elevators, the two sides sometimes pointing fingers as the breakdowns continued.
One industry expert says it's a familiar story these days, and it's putting passengers at risk.
None of this surprises you.
None of it surprises me.
You see this a lot.
I see this a lot.
But first, jump back to January 2018, a year before the incident on elevator 29. JPS sends this email to ThyssenKrupp, the company the hospital hired to maintain its elevators. A hospital staffer writes, "My frustration is that I have so many elevators down with no end in sight, and when one fails, it takes forever to get it fixed. Some have been down for weeks, including elevator 29. ThyssenKrupp responds at one point suggesting the hospital needs to upgrade or modernize some of its elevators, saying they're worn out. We want to fix these elevators correctly, not just put a Band-Aid on them.
We didn't Band-Aid fix these elevators. If anybody Band-Aided them, it was ThyssenKrupp.
JPS Chief Operating Officer Bill Whitman says the hospital did spend money to modernize some elevators each year, and he says ThyssenKrupp never told the hospital any elevator posed a danger.
They never gave me any kind of proposal and said, these elevators are at risk. Your patients, your staff, your visitors are at risk. You must modernize this elevator.
Still, Whitman wishes he could turn back time. Emails show one elevator on the list considered for modernization was Elevator 29.
Do you think upgrading that elevator might have prevented that incident?
It might have.
In hindsight, do you regret not modernizing
Oh,
that elevator?
Absolutely. I have no crystal ball. I wish I could go back to January 19th and do something different.
Whitman says he also wishes he had cut ties with ThyssenKrupp a year earlier. Internal emails show the elevator troubles continued through 2018.
In one case, an elderly person suffered a head injury when an elevator in the parking garage failed to level with the floor. Still, the hospital kept its contract with ThyssenKrupp until this year, when Elevator 29 injured Karen Stratford. ThyssenKrupp, one of the world's largest elevator companies, declined to comment for this report. In an earlier statement, the company said it made all repairs in a timely fashion and that JPS has kept us in the dark on details associated with this incident. It is highly unusual for a customer to not only withhold this type of important information from its elevator service provider, but to express any partnership concerns through the media before contacting us. ThyssenKrupp has also accused the hospital of using its own staff to fix elevators and sent this letter to JPS 9 days before Stratford was injured, warning repairs performed by untrained individuals can put the riding public at risk. The hospital denies doing that. How sad is it to you to see a situation that starts like this with months of back and forth, and then it ends very tragically with someone severely injured?
It's very sad. It's very sad, and you see it more often than you'd like to admit.
Elevator engineer Sheila Sweat is a consultant who's worked for elevator companies and building owners. She says as elevators become more high-tech, maintenance companies sometimes struggle to keep up with complex repair calls.
They're just overloaded, 100%.
Meanwhile, building owners often feel stuck because elevator maintenance contracts can be hard to get out of.
It sounds like the public is really caught in the middle.
They are.
And is that jeopardizing safety?
I would say yes.
We assume that the elevators are safe.
Hisashi and Lynn Nikaido want the industry to do better. Their son Toshi, a medical resident, was killed when an elevator at a Houston hospital malfunctioned, decapitating him when he became trapped in the doors.
Only when an accident occurs then we are brought back to reality. This is only a machine. Machine could have failed.
At JPS, elevator troubles continue today. When we arrived for our interview recently, 2 elevators in the parking garage were out of service. A new maintenance company just started in April, while the staff still struggles to understand how something that seemed so simple became a threat.
I will take this to my grave. This has been catastrophic for this organization, for me personally, for the staff.
The state investigators report released today points out Elevator 29 was an older model that did not have a backup emergency braking system. Tonight, the state says it is continuing to investigate what, if any, enforcement action should be taken in this case. Meanwhile, Brandon Meredith, Karen Stratford is now at a rehab hospital. An attorney for her family says she has suffered long-term brain damage.
Disturbing story. Thank you, Scott.
Troubling. Scott Gordon, you talked to some people on the street about this new report. Are they worried?
They are worried, Meredith, but I think the truth is that a lot of people simply take elevators for granted.
I work on the 47th floor, so it's not like I could walk up all that way, so I just have to kind of go with it, you know?
Most people do that, yeah. Just think that they're gonna get there with no problem.
And you?
12 floors I can walk. So if something happens, I'm okay.
So it's not like most of us can stop riding elevators
Right.
altogether. We need them, but I think a lot of people are going to take notice of this report.
Yeah, not realistic. All right, Scott Gordon, thank you, and Scott Friedman as well.
Right now at NBCDFW.com, you can read all about the investigation, plus an extended interview with an elevator victim's family. Search Elevator on our website.